Tonight, there are some interesting events. Warnia, Nanako, and Aoxue are meeting and it turns out they're discussing Charlie. The three of them are best friends and love Charlie. Their parents are also chatting with Charlie about a big business venture they could pursue through a mutually beneficial partnership. On the other hand, Jacob is panting while jogging at night, accompanying Maching. In another city, Changfang and Xin are discussing how to control Oru's Hill. Dear viewers, enjoy the storyline. Thank you.
Chapter 2585. Aoxue felt a little lost when she heard the two talk about being rescued by Charlie. She held Momotaro in her arms, sat down on the ground, and sighed, "Hey, I suddenly envy you." The two couldn't help looking at her at the same time. Warnia asked, "Aoxue, what do you envy us for?" Aoxue said earnestly, "I envy you all for having the experience of being saved by the hero like Master Wade. Why haven't I encountered such a thing?" Nanako hurriedly interrupted her, blurting out, "Aoxue, don't talk nonsense. This kind of thing is not a joke." "That's right." Warnia also said extremely solemnly, "This kind of flag must not stand in disorder. Peace and safety is the most important thing." Aoxue whispered, but I really envy you." Seeing her hopelessness, Warnia and Nanako couldn't help but glance at each other and laughed bitterly at the same time. On the one hand, the two of them were surprised by Aoxue's amazing brain circuit, and on the other hand, they couldn't help feeling in their hearts. It seemed that Aoxue, like the two of them, loved Charlie deeply in her heart, otherwise it would not be possible to have such an idea suddenly. Warnia looked at Aoxue and said with a smile, "You don't envy others indiscriminately. In fact, I am quite envious of your experience of Master Wade escorting you at every critical moment. It's like being protected by a prince all the way." "Little princess, don't need to see the sins in the world." Aoxue blushed all of a sudden, and said vaguely, "Ah. Where? I am not Master Wade's little princess." Warnia nodded, looked at Nanako, and smiled. It seems that Aoxue doesn't want to be Master Wade's little princess. "When we turn around, we have to remind Master Wade." Nanako nodded in agreement and said, "Yes, when Mr. Charlie arrives, I'll find a chance to tell him." Aoxue was anxious and blurted out, "Oh, don't get me wrong. I didn't mean that." Warnia deliberately asked her, "Then what do you mean?" Aoxue replied with shame, I think Master Wade will not treat me as his little princess." Warnia smiled and said, "Aoxue, listen to what you mean, don't you like Master Wade?" "Ah." Aoxue was startled, blushing immediately and waving her hand, "I don't. I really don't. I don't believe it." Warnia smiled, "You must like Master Wade. Look at you, your face is red." "Yes." Nanako also joked, "It looks like a ripe red apple. I can't wait to take a bite." If Mr. Charlie saw it, maybe he would have the same idea. Aoxue suddenly covered her face with her hands, and said shyly, "Don't talk nonsense, I didn't blush." Although she said so, she was very worried in her heart. She hurriedly stood up and said hurriedly, "Sister Warnia, Nanako, I'll go to the bathroom, you guys, talk first." After speaking, she ran away quickly. Warnia and Nanako looked at her back and couldn't help but smile at each other. Warnia said seriously, "Nanako, do you mean Master Wade?" Nanako pursed her mouth and said seriously, "I don't know if Charlie is not a flower, but I feel that he is a flower himself, and a flower that attracts bees and butterflies." Warnia nodded in admiration, and said with emotion, "Apart from him, there may be no other flower that can attract bees and butterflies." At this moment, the men in the other corner of the banquet hall also talked happily. After everyone chatted, Mr. Song looked at Qin Gang and smiled. "By the way, President Qin, you have a lot of exports to Japan recently. You can get in touch with Mr. Ito in the future to see if there is any good cooperation, just set a direction." Ito Takehiko asked curiously, "Oh. Mr. Qin also has business in Japan?" Qin Gang nodded and said truthfully, "To be honest, I was originally in the business of medicinal materials, originally only for China's domestic market, but recently the export volume from Japan has soared, accounting for half of all my medicinal materials sales, even it's still growing." Takehiko Ito asked in surprise, "How much does Mr. Qin supply to Japan?" Qin Gang said with a respectful expression, "I am afraid, these medicinal materials are all supplied to Master Wade, SJX Pharmaceutical. Didn't Master Wade buy Kobayashi Pharmaceutical in Japan some time ago, and then handed over all the supply of medicinal materials for several production lines to me. That's it. Ito Takehiko suddenly understood. Before, he also wanted to invest in JX Pharmaceutical, but he didn't expect to have a little unhappy with Charlie because of this, so Charlie was scammed by $4.5 billion. At first, Ito Takehiko thought that the $4.5 billion must not be given to Charlie so easily, but then Charlie saved his daughter, avoided the Ito family from being harmed, and even saved his own life. Kindness made him stop thinking about the $4.5 billion thing a long time ago. Even if he thinks about it, he doesn't feel distressed at all but feels lucky. In fact, there is another very important reason why Ito Takehiko doesn't care about the $4.5 billion now, that is, the Ito family survived the Tokyo chaos almost intact. On the other hand, the Takahashi family and the Matsumoto family suffered a heavy loss and the other was wiped out. The Ito family relied on the integration of their resources and markets, and their strength increased rapidly. This huge increase is simply not comparable to $4.5 billion United States dollars. Therefore, not only did Ito not hate Charlie but instead regarded Charlie as the benefactor of the entire Ito family. Chin Gang is actually the same. He sighed with respect and emotion. Since Master Wade handed over the supply of medicinal materials for JX Pharmaceutical to the Chin family, the family's business volume has more than doubled, and the revenue growth ratio has been higher. More importantly, Master Wade is not like other manufacturers. Other manufacturers like to keep prices down. Of these companies I work with, the longest billing period is over half a year. Take the previous Ways Pharmaceuticals. For the raw materials I gave him in January, he has to wait for July to settle the bill. During this period, I will continue to supply the raw materials for the 5 months from February to June, which is equivalent to being in the hands of their family alone, which has suppressed my half-year payment for goods, and the financial pressure is extremely high. However, now working with Master Wade has never pressured any settlement. As long as the medicinal materials supplied by me have arrived and passed the inspection, the finance will transfer the money to me immediately. Elder Song, who was on the side, smiled slightly and said with emotion, "You, me, and everyone, have been greatly favored by Master Wade. If it weren't for Master Wade, we wouldn't be in the state we are today." After speaking, he looked at Warnia who was chatting with Nanako and Aoxue, and exclaimed, "If it weren't for Master Wade, Warnia and I would have died long ago, and the Song family would not have us today." Ito Takehiko also sighed, "Yeah. If it weren't for Master Wade, not only would the little girl be killed by the murderer, but the Matsumoto family's fate might have to be borne by the Ito family." Chin Gang hurriedly said, "Since everyone has received the favor of Master Wade, then Master will come later, we must respect him with 2 more cups." At this moment, Charlie just stepped forward under the leadership of the housekeeper. Hearing Chin Gang's words, he smiled and said, "What? You guys are discussing it well. Do you want to drink for me all night?" Seeing Charlie came, Chin Gang was first to stand up and respectfully said, "Master leaves you to come and we are when it comes to you." Charlie smiled and said, "I heard, you said a little later I drink a few glasses to keep it." Chin hastily laughed, "You really want to drink a few glasses, but certainly did not want to fill you mean." Charlie smiled, then said to Father Song said, "Mr. Song, how have you been recently?" Father Song nodded respectfully said, "Mr. Wade, thanks to you, my decrepit body is in very good shape." Charlie nodded. At this moment, Ito Takehiko beckoned to Charlie and said respectfully, "Hello, Mr. Wade, we meet again." Charlie already guessed Ito Takehiko somehow here, however, the natural surface was normal and he pretended to be very surprised and said, "Oh, it is Mr. Ito, I did not think you were here." Then, Charlie looks to his side and Ito smiled and said, "Ms. Ito and Mr. Tanaka are also here." Megumi Ito quickly stood up, gave a 90 bow, and said, "Hello Mr. Wade." Without his lower limbs, Tanaka could only put his hands together and said, "Hello, Mr. Wade." Charlie nodded slightly, not far from the Warnia to chat with Nanako, blushed slightly and said, "Charlie." Charlie looked at Nanako, and saw that she was still soft and watery, and said with a smile, "Nanako, I have heard Warnia say that you are coming to Oris Hill for a concert, but I didn't expect you to come so early. Nanako said shyly, Charlie, I just happened to be not that busy recently, so I wanted to take this opportunity to come to Oris Hill to relax and take a break. Charlie nodded, smiled, and asked her, how not tell me ahead of time before coming? Nanako pursed her mouth, and said in a low voice, I wanted to give you a little surprise, so I didn't say anything, please don't be angry. Quote. Charlie laughed. How could it be, but next time you may consider telling me in advance, that time I would prepare to give you a welcoming dinner. Nanako quickly said, okay, next time I will tell you in advance. Charlie nodded, aside Warnia said with a smile. Mr. Wade, do you think we do not want to take a seat now? Okay. Charlie said with a smile. I'm sorry to let you wait for me for so long. The journey was from a bit far away. I just happened to see my father-in-law. Father Song then stood up, smiled, and said, we were just talking about you, as you arrived here. Charlie laughed. Mr. Song, you are the master, of course, that you have to be seated first. Father Song would like to shirk, but Charlie insisted, come, sit down at your main seat up, you are sitting next to me. Seeing Father Song did not refuse, quickly said, I will follow whatever you order Mr. Wade. At this time, Aoxue, who had just splashed her face with cold water, also came out of the bathroom. Seeing Charlie coming, she immediately ran to the front with excitement, and said excitedly, Master, you are here. Charlie looked at her and nodded and smiled. Aoxue is also here. Quote. Yes, Aoxue happy to say, Nanako brought me an Akita dog, I came here to pick it. Then, she blushed and said, Mr. Wade, do you want to play with it? Chin Gang blurted out and scolded, Aoxue. Didn't you see that everyone is going to eat at the table? You know you are fooling around, and sit down next to me. Aoxue curled her lips when she was reprimanded, and said angrily, I know Dad. Charlie smiled at this time. The dog will let the housekeeper take care of him first, and then play with him after eating. Father Song hurriedly ordered the housekeeper to take the dog out first. Everyone sat down one by one. On Charlie's left is Mr. Song, and on his right is Ito Takehiko. As for Emi Ito and Koichi Tanaka, they were originally beaten to death and did not want to be on the table, but Charlie still kept them. The relationship between master and servant in Japanese society is very clear. Sometimes the title of a predecessor can kill a person, but here it is relatively less rigid, and Charlie is not the kind of person who cares about these details, so he can tell them to sit together. Emi Ito and Koichi Tanaka are naturally flattered. After everyone was seated, Mr. Song asked everyone to pour the wine. This time the wine is still the same Motai. In the upper class, this is the most popular brand and the only choice for foreign guests and envoys at the state banquet. Moreover, the Moutai collected by Mr. Song are almost all treasures that the rich can't buy on the market. Just take out a bottle, and it has a history of at least 20 years. After the servant poured white wine for everyone, Ito Takehiko couldn't help holding up a glass, sniffed it under his nose, and exclaimed, it really is China's national wine. The fragrance alone is enough to be intoxicating. Mr. Song asked curiously, oh. Mr. Ito also has research on Chinese liquor. Takehiko Ito nodded and said earnestly, you said, in Japan, ordinary people love beer and sake. Young people love whiskey and red wine. Some older upper-class members and members of established families. My favorite is actually Washa's Baiju. After speaking, he exclaimed, after all, the cultures in Japan originated from China, and the wine culture is the same. Old-fashioned Japanese families require their children to learn Chinese culture from an early age, so we learned from the records in historical books that ancient Chinese said that, the world's fine wine is the only one in the world. A few decades ago, Japanese Prime Minister Kakui Tanaka visited China, and he also expressed this feeling. When we studied Tang poetry and Song Si, in order to find the uninhibited feeling of ancient Chinese poets, we even went to find a few cups of Chinese white wine. The hearty feeling is really nostalgic. Mr. Song nodded and said with a smile, that's right, take advantage of today's opportunity, you must drink a few more glasses. If you like to drink, when you return to Japan, I will have someone prepare a batch for you to take back. Ito Takehiko said, thank you, Mr. Song. If Mr. Song has time, come to Japan for a few days, and I will entertain you all the time. Father Song smiled and said, okay, I must come over and disturb you if I have a chance. After all, he looked at Charlie and said respectfully, Master, why don't you have an opening remark? Let's toast and meet each other. Charlie smiled and said, you are the head of the family. If I were to say the opening remarks, wouldn't it be overwhelming? Mr. Song firmly said, you are the great benefactor of the Song family. You are here. This is your home court. We are all sitting there thanks to your care and favor. The opening remarks from you are absolutely suitable. That's it. Charlie was silent for a moment, nodded, and said, okay. After all, he stood up, holding a wine glass, and said seriously, first of all, welcome Mr. Ito and his family to Oris Hill. I have no good impressions of most Japanese companies and entrepreneurs, but Mr. Ito still impresses me. So, I also hope that Mr. Ito can cooperate more with the Song family, with the Chin family, and with JX Pharmaceutical in the future. Everyone strives to achieve resource exchange, resource development, and resource symbiosis. Together, we will find more opportunities and incubate more projects. As soon as Charlie said this, the expressions of Old Song and Chin Gang became a little excited. They knew that Charlie was actually helping them match up. The Ito family is now the strongest family in Japan, and its asset scale is also trillions of yuan converted into RMB. The Song family, but just entered the 100 billion club. Chin Gang is now halfway from the threshold of the 100 billion club. Therefore, if they can cooperate with the Ito family, it is indeed a high climb for both of them. If the Ito family really cooperates with them, it will definitely bring them more growth opportunities. Naturally, Ito Takehiko knew Charlie's intentions, so he said almost without hesitation, since Mr. Wade has said so, then our Ito family will naturally go all out to cooperate with Ms. Song and Mr. Chin. As he said, he looked at Warnia and said seriously, Ms. Song, have you already started cooperating with Nippon Steel? After your new project is completed and put into production, all the real estate development projects of our Ito family will purchase Songs in addition to the products of the joint venture between us. Several of our shipyards will transfer all steel orders over. When Warnia heard this, she was immediately stunned. The cooperation between the Song family and Nippon Steel will focus on special steel in the future. Ito Takehiko's words are tantamount to binding a solid high-quality large customer to the steel industry of the Song family. In the real economy, the most important thing is to find high-quality customers. A foundry company like Foxconn can bind a company like Apple to generate tens of billions of output value in a year. Such customers are the most important resource thing in the real industry. So, Warnia said with surprise and joy, Mr. Ito, thank you so much. Takehiko Ito waved his hand and smiled, you don't have to be so polite. In future cooperation like this, just let Nanako directly connect with you. She will definitely give you as many resources as possible, and we will work together for a win-win situation. Nanako Ito took the conversation, nodded, and smiled. Yes, Sister Warnia, we must strengthen cooperation in the future. If your Song group wants to develop overseas, you are welcome to come to Japan for a visit, and then we can work together. Warnia folded her hands together and said gratefully, thank you very much. It just so happens that Nanako and you will be staying in Oris Hill for many days this time. You can also take a look at some of the current industrial plans of our Song family and see if there are any projects worthy of cooperation. Nanako Ito nodded without hesitation and said, it's okay. Sister Warnia will work hard to help me introduce the current situation of the Song group in detail. At this time, Ito looked at Chin Gang and said with a smile, Mr. Chin, I don't know what business does the Chin family do besides medicinal materials business. Chin Gang said hurriedly, in fact, our previous business lines were quite complicated. In addition to medicinal materials, we also did some retail and trade businesses, including antiques, automobiles, and some heavy industrial and mining equipment. Ito nodded and smiled. I don't know much about antiques, but if you do automobile trade and heavy industrial and mining equipment, if you need to import from Japan, you can contact me, Japanese automobile companies, and many well-known heavy industries. The bosses of the companies are very familiar with me. If they don't cooperate, I can help you match up. If you have already cooperated, I can help you get better terms. When Qin Gang heard this, he immediately said excitedly, "That's really a thank you to Mr. Ito. To be honest, we do still have a few brands that we want to cooperate with. If possible, please help us to connect." Ito nodded and said with a smile, "Mr. Qin, don't worry, I still have some faith in this regard." After speaking, Ito looked at Charlie and said seriously, "Mr. Wade, the Su family's ocean shipping license was revoked recently. It is definitely a good opportunity to quickly enter this field. I wonder if you are interested." Charlie waved his hand and said with a smile, "I don't know anything about ocean transportation, and I don't even have a transport ship, so I'm talking about ocean transportation." Ito Takehiko hurriedly said, "Mr. Wade, the ship is actually not a problem. In fact, most ocean shipping companies all over the world rent freighters and oil tankers, just like most airlines are rented. Some companies are good at operations, but not good at heavy asset management and fixed asset planning, while some companies are good at fixed asset investment but not good at operations. This is like many companies that open global chain retail stores, but generally do not choose to buy shops on their own, and those real estate developers who invest in shopping malls often only rent shops to merchants and collect rent themselves. A large part of the world's ships and airplanes are purchased by leasing companies. They usually place orders with manufacturers early. After the orders are delivered, the ships and airplanes are not enough for themselves, so they just rent them out and start collecting them. Renting makes money. Now a large number of cargo ships of the Su family are idle, and many of them are leased. If they cannot resume normal operations in a short period of time, they are unable to afford so much rent. They are very likely to cancel their leases in batches. At that time, there will be a large number of freighter resources released in the market. You can eat it on a large scale, and then take the opportunity to grab the Su family's ocean transportation business. When Mr. Song on the side heard this, he couldn't help sighing. Ocean shipping is indeed a very, very profitable industry. Now the vast majority of international trade logistics rely on shipping, so as long as the countries on the earth are still working normally, the ocean shipping industry will continue to grow. With that, he looked at Charlie, and said, "Mr. Wade, your JX pharmaceutical now has the momentum to sell well all over the world. You might as well take this opportunity of a lifetime to start ocean transportation, and in the future, it will be important to the global logistics of JX Pharmaceutical. Transportation also helps a lot." Qin Gang couldn't help but said, "Mr. Song, I have no intention of arguing with you, but Mr. Wade's JX Pharmaceutical, which produces all medicines, is small in size and light in weight. If it is sold globally in the future, it will be shipped to one country at a time. At most 2 or 3 containers are great, but a freighter often has thousands of containers. The demand and supply are not equal." Mr. Song laughed and said, "Of course it is not equal to relying on JX Pharmaceutical, but have you ever thought about it? Your import and export trade, your car import business, you have to rely on shipping. And all you do are imported cars. In our domestic market, imported cars are nothing more than so few origins. The most recent is Japan, followed by Germany, France, Italy, and the farthest is the United States. As far as I know, one standard container can hold 2 cars. Imported luxury cars have a huge demand for ocean transportation." Qin Gang slapped his thigh and smiled. "Mr. Song can see thoroughly. I only think about Mr. Wade's JX Pharmaceutical, but I didn't even think about including my own business." Mr. Song continued, "When our joint venture with Nippon Steel is completed and put into operation, we will have a very high demand for iron ore. Iron ore is generally imported from Brazil or Australia, and a ship is loaded with more than a dozen, 10,000 or even hundreds of thousands of tons. The demand for ocean shipping is also huge. If Mr. Wade runs ocean shipping, it will actually be good news for everyone." Charlie hasn't spoken, but he couldn't help but feel a little moved in his heart. JX Pharmaceutical will definitely go global in the future, but with only one JX Pharmaceutical, it will be difficult for me to catch up with the top old families like the Wade family and the Su family. At the moment, when the Su family is at its weakest, why don't I take the opportunity to grab the Su family's business? In this case, I will not only make my assets stronger but also greatly weaken the Su family. Moreover, didn't Grandpa Zongquan always want me to return to Wade's house? Since he asks me, then I can ask the family not to directly compete with me in the field of ocean transportation. In this way, even if the Wade family wants to take advantage of the Su family's share, they have to step aside for me. This is not 2 birds with 1 stone, but 3 birds with 1 stone. Charlie now has sufficient funds in his hand, and there is also a money printing machine that is constantly making money, JX Pharmaceutical, so it is really not difficult for him to start ocean transportation. Whether it is setting up a company, docking a dock, or leasing a freighter, there is no problem with funding. However, the most critical issue is that if you want to start such a large piece of new business, you must have someone with sufficient ability to take care of it. The first thing Charlie thought of was Doris. Needless to say, Doris's ability and his character is absolutely trustworthy. However, the only problem is that Doris still has to manage the Embrand group. If she is asked to take the lead for ocean transportation at the same time, she may be lacking. After thinking for a moment, Charlie decided to wait for Doris to come back from Hong Kong and talk to her first to see if she had any good ideas, or if she knew other talents who were good at management. Therefore, he said to everyone, "Thank you for your suggestions. I will carefully consider the ocean shipping." Ito Takehiko hurriedly said, "If Mr. Wade wants to do it, I will definitely support." Warnia also said without hesitation, "Master, I am also willing to support you unconditionally." Chin Gang hurriedly said, "Master, and me. When I go back tonight, I will call Tailai. He is deeply rooted in Haicheng, and it seems that he has also taken a stake in the port of Haicheng. If you choose Haicheng, with his assistance, you will be able to get twice the result with half the effort." Charlie nodded and said, "All right, you can help me ask about Tailai's situation. After I go back, I will give it a comprehensive consideration." Chin Gang quickly agreed, "Okay, Master Wade." Just as Charlie was at the dinner table and was tempted by ocean transportation, in the other city nearby, at the lakeside villa, Sus were also eating, and suddenly received a tip. After listening to the newsletter, he immediately said to Zin with a dark face, "Zin, I just got the message that Ito Takehiko of the Ito family has gone to Oris Hill." "What?" Zin exclaimed, "Dad, how come Ito Takehiko went to Oris Hill? The Ito family doesn't seem to have any business in Oris Hill." The old man Chungfeng said solemnly, "Although I don't know what business the Ito family has in Oris Hill, I think things are not simple this time, because a bear is like his sister, and his loyalty all of his subordinates chose to stay at Shangri-La in Oris Hill." "Shangri-La?" Zin blurted out, "Isn't that the Wade family's property?" "Yes." Chungfeng Su gritted his teeth and said, "Oris Hill was originally in the Wade family's sphere of influence, belonging to the Wade family's territory. Suddenly Ito Takehiko went to Oris Hill. It is very strange in itself. He chose to stay at the Wade family hotel. It's even more dangerous." Zin hurriedly asked, "Dad, are you worried that the Ito family will cooperate with the Wade family?" "Yes." Chungfeng said earnestly, "At present, our ocean shipping industry has been suspended across the board. For a while, the entire industry is in turmoil. On the one hand, because of our suspension, there is a huge gap in the demand for international shipping that could not be met. Not counting the increase. On the other hand, the rented ships in our hands will be released to the shipowners. Once released to the shipowners, these ships will become the items that other families and businesses compete with each other for. Among them, the threat is the greatest, it is from the Wade family." Zin pondered for a moment, and said, "Dad, if Wade's and the Ito family get on the line, it will be too bad for us. Maybe the Wade family will completely overtake the Su family because of this opportunity." Chungfeng hummed, and said gloomily, "So right now there are several tasks that you need to solve urgently." Zin hurriedly stood up and said, "Dad, if there is anything I need to do, please tell me." Chungfeng said, "I want you to go to Oris Hill. First find out what Ito's motivation for going to Oris Hill is, and then find a way to establish contact with Ito, and then strive for cooperation with the Ito family. You can also drive higher. First, let the Ito family give up the cooperation with the Wade family, and then slowly establish the cooperation with them. This time we don't know how long it will punish us. We must prepare for both." Quote. Zin hurriedly said, "Dad, if I also go to Oris Hill, then there will be no one to take care of you in Suzhou. I don't know if you are in Oris Hill now, you can't get away for a while." Don't worry about me, Changfeng said lightly. No one knows that I am in Suzhou. If they scold me outside, they can't do anything with me. So you should hurry up and get things done with the Ito family. Even if you can't talk to Ito. Once the family has reached cooperation, we must not let them hold hands with the Wade family. Once they get together, then we will be in big trouble. In Changfeng's eyes, the Wade family had always been his mortal enemy. The Su family and the Wade family are like two bullies in the village. In terms of combat effectiveness, the Su family is slightly stronger than the Wade family. However, if the two parties really fight, the Su family cannot easily win. Therefore, there has been no real major conflict between the two sides. Now, the Su family accidentally slapped the foot, and the injury will not recover for a while, so the combat effectiveness is a bit weaker than the Wade family, which means that the situation of the two sides has changed, but neither side dares fight to the death with each other. However, at this time the bully in the next village went to the Wade family as a guest. What the Su family was most worried about now was that the Wade family and the bully in the next village would unite to deal with him. If that were the case, the Su family would have little power to resist. Zin said at this time, "Dad, if they both reach a consensus, then their next cooperation will be determined. It is difficult for us to influence their choice." Changfeng said indifferently, "It doesn't matter if they can't control their choice. The big deal is to find a way to kill Ito Takehiko in Oris Hill and then throw the pot to the Wade family. Think about how the Matsumoto family did it. They just wanted to kill Jufei and Jiu, and then throw the pot to the Ito family." Zin hesitated and said, "Dad, we have already encountered a lot of problems now. Ruoli, Jiu, and Leona are all targets of the outside world against the Su family. If we continue to engage in this kind of action, in case if it is really exposed, the consequences would be disastrous and unthinkable." Changfeng said coldly, "Unthinkable? Let me tell you what is unthinkable. Once the Wade family and the Ito family have reached a cooperation, they will definitely take this opportunity to expand rapidly in the field of ocean transportation. It is likely to be in a few months. Destroy all our foundations. If we lose this business, our strength will be a bit lower than that of the Wade family. If we lose this business and are picked up by the Wade family, then this is the case, we will be more inferior than them." With that said, Changfeng said with a cold expression, "In any case, we can throw away the big cake of ocean transportation. Take a 10,000 step back and say, even if Changfeng can eat this bowl of rice, one must smash this Wade family's rice bowl. Now, I can't eat this bowl of rice, anyone else can eat it, but the Wade family." When Charlie finished the banquet and left from the Song family, Zin had already started to set off for Oris Hill. In order to be able to get in touch with Takehiko Ito as soon as possible, he specially arranged for his staff to book a hotel room in Shangri-La with other identities. He also knew very well that Shangri-La was the property of the Wade family, so he not only couldn't let the Wade family know that he was staying at Shangri-La, but he couldn't even let them know that he was going to Oris Hill. According to his plan, after he has booked the room, checked in, and received the room card, he will wait near the Shangri-La hotel. When he arrives, give him the room card, and he can skip the check-in link and enter directly into the hotel room. Although the hotel clearly requires the real name system at the moment, the real name system can only be implemented to the opener. And the higher the level of the hotel, the more attention is paid to the user's feelings in S3X. As long as the guests entering and leaving are dressed decently, there will be basically no staff to verify his identity. Charlie didn't know that Zin was on his way to Oris Hill. He drove away from the Song's house and called the old father-in-law Jacob on the road. As soon as the phone was connected, he asked, "Dad, I'm done here, what about you? If you are over, I will pick you up." Jacob gasped and said, "Charlie, I'm almost exhausted. You hurry up and save me." Charlie asked in surprise, "Dad, what's the matter with you?" Jacob's voice said in despair, "Don't mention it, I was pulled out for a run by your aunt, and my leg is about to break." When Charlie heard this, he couldn't help laughing. Maching was sick and suddenly took Jacob out for a run, which seemed to be due to excessive physical strength and energy. From this point of view, the dose of this rejuvenating pill is still a bit large. Immediately, he smiled and asked Jacob, "Dad, where are you running? Send me the location. I will pick you up." Jacob hurriedly said, "Wait a minute, I will send you the position." After speaking, Jacob hurriedly ended the call and sent Charlie a location on WeChat. Immediately afterwards, another text message was sent. "Good son-in-law, come on, my leg is about to break." Charlie replied and drove to the location. At this moment, Jacob was sitting on the curb on the side of the road, sweating profusely all over his body. He really did not expect to dream today. He wanted to take advantage of Maching's illness to brew the atmosphere, and the sound of a wave would still be there. But who would have thought that he would be dragged by Maching and ran on the riverside all night? And Maching's physical strength is surprisingly good. It seems that she is not tired from running, but her old body has such a foundation, and after half an hour of running, he almost lost half his life when tired. He wanted to give up a long time ago, but because he didn't want Maching to look down on him, he had to grit his teeth and persist. However, even if he tried his best, he still lags behind her a lot, so she could only run out by herself for a while and then turn back. Jog with Jacob for a while, then run out, and so on. Jacob ran away crying without tears. Now he, let alone trying to find a way to keep the sound of the waves with Maching, even if Maching took the initiative to ask, he is fundamentally powerless, just want to go home quickly and lie down. Charlie drove quickly to the location. When he saw Jacob, Maching was standing beside Jacob, waving at him vigorously to signal him to continue running, while Jacob was sitting on the road gutter with pain on his face. Waved his hands again and again. Charlie pulled over and stopped the car. When Jacob saw him, it was as if he had seen a savior, his eyes gleaming. However, he still deliberately did not speak to Charlie immediately. When Maching saw Charlie, she smiled first. "Charlie is here." Seeing Maching wearing tight-fitting sportswear, Charlie secretly exclaimed, "This auntie is indeed the idol of middle-aged and elderly men. How does this figure, look, and temperament can be said to be of a 50-year-old? If she is 30 years old, most people will believe it." Immediately, Charlie nodded and smiled at Maching, and said, "Hello, Aunt." After speaking, Charlie was holding back in his heart, and deliberately asked her, "Auntie, I heard Dad say that you are sick, why did you come out and run? And your complexion looks very good, not at all sick. Looks like you are even better than the last time." Maching smiled and said, "I did have a high fever at first, but your dad brought me a bowl of millet porridge. I just had it." Charlie pretended to be surprised and asked, "Is the porridge so magical?" "This is the first time I have heard of it." Maching smiled and said, "To be honest, I don't know the principle, but I am really well, and my body feels endless strength." Charlie nodded and looked at Jacob, who was sitting on the floor with a flushed face and sweating profusely. He joked, "Dad, why didn't you come with a bowl of millet porridge?" Jacob said angrily, "I want to know that millet porridge has this effect. I must have bought an extra bowl at the time." After finishing speaking, he deliberately turned off the topic, pretending to be helpless, and asked him, "Oh, Charlie, why are you here so soon? Didn't I say that you waited half an hour to pick me up? I still have to run with your aunt." Charlie was a little bit astonished at first when he heard the words of Mr. Athlete but soon recovered. Presumably, the old man was afraid of losing face in front of Maching, so he said this deliberately, acting as if he was not in a hurry to escape. So Charlie smiled and said, "My side ended early, so I came here first. If you haven't run enough, you will continue to run for a while. I'll be waiting for you." As soon as Jacob heard this, he waved his hand quickly. "If you don't run away, you won't run away. It's so late. I'm sorry to keep you waiting for me." Charlie smiled and said, "Waiting? I don't have any serious business all day long. You don't know. Besides, Claire has a meeting in the Embarrassment group today. I am not in a hurry to go back." Jacob gave Charlie a faintly white look and said in his heart, "It's because I call you my son-in-law every day. At this time, you don't know how to find me a step down, and you deliberately demolish my platform." Thinking about it, he couldn't help sighing, and said, "Oh, just remembering, I made an appointment with an old man to pick up something from his house in the evening. It was too late, or let's go there first." After speaking, he looked at Maching and said apologetically, "Maching, why don't I come here today and I will run with you when the sky gets down?" Maching smiled and nodded, and said, "Okay, it's not too early, you and Charlie will go back." It is so hard for you to come and take care of me so far, and you have been running with me for so long. Jacob wanted to cry without tears in his heart, but he smiled and said, these are all trivial things, or you can go with us and let Charlie send you home. Maching thought for a while, nodded, and said, okay, it's not interesting to run by myself, so please trouble Charlie to drop me. Charlie smiled and said, Auntie, you are too polite. Get in the car. Jacob immediately opened the rear door for Maching diligently. When Maching was about to board the car, someone suddenly shouted in surprise, Maching. Why are you here? The trio followed their reputations and found a muscular middle-aged man wearing sports shorts and short sleeves, trotting all the way to the front. Charlie couldn't help but look at this middle-aged man. The opponent was almost 1.8 meters tall, had a very well-proportioned figure, and had muscle lines all over his body. He looked only in his early 40s. Moreover, the other party is on such a cold day and wears so little to run, and he knows that his physical fitness is very good. What's more rare is that this man is very handsome and has thick short hair, which is really stylish. When Jacob saw this man, he immediately became vigilant, looking at him up and down, but he couldn't help feeling a little inferior. Compared with this man, Jacob is an ordinary 50-year-old middle-aged man. He usually does not exercise, let alone fitness, and has no systematic diet and exercise habits. His energy and spirit are far behind. Maching was also surprised at this time and said, oh, Mr. Watt, why are you here? The middle-aged man known as Mr. Watt smiled slightly and said, didn't you come out for a run? I didn't expect to meet you here. The more Jacob looked at the other's spirit, the more jealous he became, and couldn't help asking, Maching, who is this? Maching hurriedly introduced, Jacob, this is my colleague at the University for the Elderly, Mr. Watt, Pollard Watt. Mr. Watt used to be a professor of economics and management at MIT. He also recently returned to China and served as an associate at the School of Economics and Management of Oris Hill University of Finance and Economics. The dean is also a visiting professor at a senior university. When Charlie heard Oris Hill University of Finance and Economics, he couldn't help but think to himself, isn't this the school Aoxue attended? After speaking, she said to Pollard Watt, Mr. Watt, this is my former university classmate Jacob, next to him, his son-in-law Charlie. Jacob asked subconsciously, MIT. What MIT? At this time, Pollard Watt took the initiative to explain to Jacob, gentlemen, MIT is the abbreviation of Massachusetts Institute of Technology, which is a university in the United States. Jacob's expression immediately became extremely embarrassed. Massachusetts Institute of Technology is ranked among the top 3 universities in the world. Jacob is also a university student, and of course, he has heard of it. However, he did not know that the abbreviation of Massachusetts Institute of Technology is MIT, so he suddenly showed his timidity. Looking at this man again, Jacob feels even more inferior. He's a professor at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. To be able to be a professor at MIT, he must have at least a PhD degree. And I, just graduated from Zhongshan University. The rank is 108,000 miles worse than that of him, and he looks young with a tendon, shish. Standing face to face with him, acting as if I were his second uncle. Seeing that Jacob hadn't spoken for a while, Pollard smiled and asked, hello, Mr. Jacob, I don't know where is Mr. Jacob now. Maching on the side introduced, Jacob is the standing director of the Calligraphy and Painting Association. Our calligraphy hobby group at the university for seniors often interacts with them. Pollard Watt nodded and smiled. Unexpectedly, Mr. Jacob is still in the calligraphy and calligraphy circle. I actually like calligraphy very much. I have practiced some days before, but now I am busy with work, so I don't have time to take care of it. If I have a chance, there will be more learning from Mr. Jacob. Jacob didn't expect that this guy's academic qualifications and background would be awesome. When he opened his mouth he was so humble, and suddenly he felt that he had lost a lot of meaning, and he said, oh, there will be opportunities in the future. After speaking, he deliberately looked down at the Rolex on his wrist and said, Brother Watt, it's a bit late today. We have to go first, sorry. Pollard smiled slightly. It's okay, Mr. Jacob should be busy first if he has anything. Chapter 2596. Then, he said jokingly, By the way, Mr. Jacob looks like he should be about 50 years old. Yes, 50. Jacob nodded. Pollard smiled and said, then you can't call me old brother. I am a few years older than you. This year is 55. What? Jacob asked dumbfounded. You are 55 this year. Yes. Pollard Watt said with a smile, I just passed my 55th birthday in January this year, and I am considered 56 years old. Jacob's expression suddenly became a little ugly. It's not anger, it's mainly inferiority complex. He thinks Pollard Watt should be around 45, but he didn't expect this guy to be 5 years older than himself. Pollard Watt looked at Maching at this time and asked her, by the way, Maching, Mr. Jacob has to go first. How about you? Are you going back in a hurry? If you don't go back, let's run for a while. Maching just hadn't run to the fullest, and she felt that she was still full of energy and strength. When she heard Pollard Watt's proposal, she almost agreed without hesitation and said with a smile, okay, I just didn't run enough. Let's run for a while. After that, she looked at Jacob and Charlie and smiled. Jacob, Charlie, then I won't go back with you. Charlie, you will drive back on the road slowly. Jacob was depressed to death and wanted to stop her, but he didn't know where to cut in. Charlie complied and said to Maching, Auntie, then we will leave first. After speaking, Charlie gave Jacob a hand. Dad, let's go. Jacob was extremely bored. When Charlie returned to the car, Maching had already run forward with Pollard. He looked at the backs of the two of them and said angrily, Charlie, the grandson said he was 55 years old. How could a 55-year-old person be so young? Charlie smiled and said, people like sports, just like Aunt. Most of the credit for keeping self so well comes from long-term unremitting sports. Jacob smacked his lips and said with a black face, I think this grandson is interested in your aunt. Charlie casually said, Aunt is so good, surely many men are interested in her, right? Jacob said anxiously, the point is, this grandson seems to be quite good too. Professor of MIT, this title alone is already very scary, maybe he will become my biggest competitor. As he said, he couldn't help but gritted his teeth and cursed. Damn, you said this group of men who have gone abroad, since they have all gone out, can't they just stay in the foreign country? Why run back so blindly? Charlie didn't take it seriously and said with a smile, young people leave home and return to the boss. After all, local people still hope that they will return to their roots in the future. Besides, when they return to China to become professors, they are also contributing to the country and at least able to cultivate talents for the motherland. Jacob said angrily, then it's not a loss to the country. Especially this guy is from the United States. Your aunt has also lived in the United States for many years. They must have many common things. What about me? Cooking have never seen anything in the United States.